Welcome to a game dev update on the VR puzzle game. In the last video, we added some functionality to the objects in the scene. And in this video, I will be experimenting with the lighting and ambience of this game level. I will be testing out two completely different lighting setups for this scene and getting the lighting and ambience to a much better place for when I work on the next steps of this project. If you want to check out the first two videos in this series, you can find the link in the video description. So I want to add textures to these models, but first, the default lighting could use some work. There isn't a lot of definition in the shadows, so everything looks a bit flat, and it's a little hard to read the objects in the room. The shadows are also pretty pixelated, and everything is quite gray. I know I'm going to end up adjusting the lighting a lot more as the development of this game progresses, so I just want to perform a first pass to experiment with the lighting that I'm envisioning for this game before I bring in textures. There are two different types of lighting and ambient effects that I want to create today. First, I want to create an afternoon golden hour sunset vibe, where sunlight is streaming into the room from the window, and everything else in the room is mostly covered in shadows. I also want to play with combinations of colorful lighting, as I intend for this level to feel a bit stylized. For the second type of lighting, I want to go in the completely opposite direction. I want to set up bright lighting with soft, diffused shadows, but I want there to be enough contrast between the shadows that you can still read the objects in the room. There should be no color in this setup, and it should have the appearance that light is coming from nowhere in particular. These are two completely different types of lighting, and I plan to use both in the game. So let's start by creating the afternoon sunlit scene first. Right away, I want to fix the pixelated looking shadows. It's going to be important for the player to be able to read the shadows for gameplay, so I'm going to go into the renderer settings and bump up the shadow resolution to give them more definition. I'm also going to adjust how far away shadows can be seen. This is a pretty small sized level, so I only need shadows to be visible as far as the length of the room. And by bringing down the shadow distance, the shadows can look even sharper. Next, I'm going to play with the lighting settings. My main source of light is going to be the sun. So I'm going to set up a sunlight and give it a warm yellow color to simulate afternoon sunlight. And I'll point it towards the window so it shines into the room. The rest of the lighting in the scene is affected by the ambient light that's coming from the skybox. So I want to switch out the default skybox to something else. I went to the Unity Asset Store and tried out a few skybox textures that are available for free, just to see what my options are. There are two skyboxes that have a sun with a low position in the sky, and yellow sun rays and a purpley hue around the sun, which is closer to the look I want. So I'm just going to use one of these for now. But I think I want to eventually come back and switch out the skybox texture for something else. I also want to make sure that when it's time to apply reflective materials to the objects in the scene, like metallic materials for example, that their reflections are accurate to what's actually in the scene. So I'm going to bring in a reflection probe and size it down to cover the room. Next, I'm ready to add some more dimension to the shadows in this level. I'm adding ambient occlusion, so objects can cast ambient shadows onto each other, which gives some definition to everything in the scene. And finally, let's add a light bulb to the lamp and give it an emissive material so that it glows yellow. Okay, so let's check out how everything is looking in VR so far. I'm noticing right away that there isn't very much of that purple hue that I'm going for. Part of the room is purple, but one side is blue and the other side is looking kind of gray. So I'm going to want to adjust the ambient lighting to be more purple and less blue-gray. I do like how golden the sun and the lamp lights look, and the bloom effect looks nice on the light bulb. But I want to add another light source for the lamp so that more light pours out of the lamp and onto the floor. The shadows that the sunlight is casting look more crisp, so that's a lot better. But I'm noticing that my VR hands are receiving sunlight no matter where I place my hands in the room, even when they're inside the shelves, for example. So I'm going to have to figure out how to fix that. I'm also noticing that the ambient occlusion is looking pretty thick. You can really see it on the inside of the shelves, so I want to turn the intensity of it down. And then when I pull the window shade down, I see that it's not blocking out the sun. And that's because I need to add a face on the back of the window shade so that light can't pass through it. And when I move dynamic objects around the room, like the pillows, they don't seem to be affected by the ambient light changes in the room. So I'm going to want to make that happen too. So let's see if we can fix all of that. First, I'll add a spotlight to the lamp so that more light is pouring out of the lamp and onto the floor, which is going to be important for a puzzle. And then to make everything more purple, I'm going to override the ambient lighting that's coming from the skybox and instead just use a custom color for the ambient lighting that's a light purple color. I'm also going to turn down the intensity of the ambient occlusion so it's less thick and a bit more diffused, but I'm still going to keep it thicker than you'd find in real life because I do want to keep a bit of a stylized look to the scene. And I'm going to play around with the post-processing effects to further adjust the color of the room. And then later I can recreate the way everything looks using the actual lighting settings and remove the need for some of the post-processing effects. And this will help keep the game running smoothly. I also want to add a few more things to the scene before we test it in VR. So I'm going to add light probes to the scene. And this is going to help simulate more accurate lighting on the dynamic objects of the scene. For example, when objects are placed in a shadowy area, they should receive more shadows on them. So to set up light probes, I'm just going to add them to the four corners of the room, and then I'm going to add more light probes wherever there are lighting changes throughout the scene. This is my first time doing this, and I think I'm adding too many light probes. So I end up cleaning this up a bit later, but I'm basically adding them on either side of where there's changes in the lighting. I also want to try baking the lighting in this scene so that some of the lighting doesn't have to be calculated during runtime. So on my first bake, I baked all of the lighting in the scene and it looks pretty moody. But I actually do not want to bake the light that's coming from the lamp because it's going to be turned on and off by the player. And I don't want to have splotches of light glowing on the floor when the lamp is turned off. And it's the same for the sun because the window shade can be pulled down to block out the sun. So I don't want to bake a glowing square on the wall either. I just want to bake ambient lighting and shadows and allow the sunlight and lamp to be adjusted in real time. And here I'm actually looking at the baked light map view. So we're just seeing lighting data that's being baked. And this baked light map view helps me see where the smudgy shadows and artifacts are appearing on the models on the light map so that I can improve the bake settings accordingly and remove some of those artifacts. I know I'm going to be regenerating baked light maps throughout the development of this game, so I'm happy with it for now for this test. And then for some final touches, I'm going to add a face to the back of the window shade so I can test out how it interacts with the sunlight. And I also want to add the ability for the player to turn on and off the lamp for this test. So I'm going to add an object that will serve as a temporary light switch. And my partner came in to help me write a quick script that turns on and off the light when the player touches the switch, so we can test that. So let's test in VR. Now the room looks more evenly purpley pink and golden, like sunset colors. To be honest, I'm not sure that this purple is my dream color, so I'm going to want to play with the colors a lot more and try out different color combinations, especially when I create a color palette for this level and bring in the textures. The ambient occlusion looks a bit less thick now around the edges of objects, and it definitely still gives that stylized effect, which I like a lot better. And now the lamp can be turned on and off by interacting with the light switch that's above the light, and I'm noticing that there isn't any light baked onto the floor when the lamp is turned off, which is good. I can also pull down the window shade now, and it blocks out the sunlight that's hitting the wall, which is kind of fun. I'll also try moving some of the objects around the room, like the pillows, and see if they receive light and shadows on them based on where they're placed in the room and where I've placed the light probes. I think they're looking better now, but I'm probably going to have to do some more tests. Alright, so now let's see if we can make the second lighting profile, where the room will be super bright with diffused shadows, and the light source should look like it's not coming from anywhere in particular. First, I'll turn off the sun and the lamp light that's inside of the room, since I won't be needing these, and I'm going to change the outside skybox to just a solid gray color for now, because I don't want any textures in the sky for this one. And I'm going to bump up the intensity of the light source that's on the ceiling so it lights up the whole room. And I'll also adjust the light probes around the room. And I'm hoping it will show some of the shadows inside of the shelves a bit better. I'll rebake the light maps with all of this new lighting data. I'm going to adjust the shadows with a little bit of post-processing effects just to see if I can get them to look a little bit lighter. And that's it. So let's check it out in VR. This room now has bright lighting with soft and diffused shadows, and I think there's enough contrast between the shadows so that you can still read the objects in the room. But I'm sure I'll adjust it more in the future. It definitely looks super grayscale with no color, which is what I want for this setup. And the light is pretty diffused, so I might be able to get away with using one light source on the ceiling, but I'm thinking I might change this to multiple points of light around the room in the future. So these two lighting setups are not perfect, but I think it's better than where the lighting was before. And it was good to test out two of the lighting concepts that will be used in the game. And through this test, I definitely see areas where I want to make further adjustments to get the look that I want. I'm glad I tackled it today because there are a lot of different factors that affect lighting in the game, and it's good to wrap my head around those concepts early and have the scenes ready to bring textures in and really see how textures might look in the game in these two lighting setups. There's still so much more to do for the development of this game. I'm thinking that my next steps will be to texture these models. And also, my partner and I have prototyped out a lot of the puzzle logic already, so a lot of it's already working. It just needs to be hooked up to the puzzle items in the game, which I'm really excited for us to do. I'm having so much fun with this project, and I hope you enjoyed taking a peek into our process in creating this game. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to catch the next episode, and check out the other 3D modeling and game dev videos on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.